Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. We have really abused our relationship with Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel. I feel like we call him every other week to bother him about all things Tennessee, but we cannot get enough. The excitement is real, and fall camp continues.
I called him for financial advice the other day. We might as well.
How'd that go? What financial wisdom did you impart on Lucas, Adam?
Okay, you better ask him. I'm trying to remember what that was.
He gets a lot of those calls.
Yeah, I'm certain. So, with everything going on, what I guess we'll start with the big stuff. What's the latest with Nico? I know that he missed the second scrimmage, dealing with an illness. Has he since returned to practice, and what has been the conversation there?
Yeah, Nico PeptoWatch is over. he got over the stomach bug. Here's the fun thing about fall camp is that every little tedious story from one practice or one presser. I mean, we can talk about a minute that Josh Heupel let slip that is running back, maybe back sooner than later yesterday. But Nico misses a scrimmage, which by the way was closed to the media, so you had to get it leaked out to you. An hour after the scrimmage was over, because Josh Heupel was supposed to mention that at his presser and just decided not to. So Nico missed the scrimmage because he had a stomach bug, and then suddenly, we all start talking about, what if this is the Georgia game or the Oklahoma game, and that stomach bug comes back, and Gaston Moore has to start because of a stomach bug? Then what? Then a 9-3 or 10-2 Tennessee team is suddenly, a 6-6 team. But he got over it. He was back in practice a couple days later. It's fine, but it just that one little thing can show you though how wide ranging things can go with this season. I saw John Adams, our columnist here, picked his game by games record this week, and he picked Tennessee to go 10-2. I saw Brett McMurphy put out his bowl projections yesterday, and he had Tennessee going to the Las Vegas Bowl, which would essentially mean they would be 9th or 10th in the SEC, which is probably a 7-5 record. And so you can, this time of year, whatever you want to find, you can find it in terms of preseason predictions. But most UT fans are certainly leaning toward the playoff or bust right now.
Adam, Lucas just made us sound like he got punched in the stomach when you said Las Vegas Bowl. The way that his body language just slumped.
December 27th, I think. And here's the thing: if Tennessee is 7-5, and I think they had McMurphy had him playing Arizona in the Vegas Bowl. If December 27th, I'm in Vegas covering a 7-5 Tennessee team. The game matters none. The news would be how many assistant coaches are getting fired.
Truly.
And how many surgeries is Nico going to need on his knee? It's knock on wood as I say that. But it would take a disaster for Tennessee to have that kind of year.
I'm guessing James Pierce would not be playing in that bowl game. That would be my guess if that were the case.
James Pierce would be working out for the Falcons or somebody around that time.
Well, that would be worst case scenario, Adam. And, we don't want to do worst case scenario radio here. But I am curious what level Tennessee needs to be at this season in your mind in order to sustain the recruiting momentum that we've seen just over the last week or so, trending towards a top 5 class. I mean, how much of an opportunity is there coming up to either sustain or even elevate what they're doing on that trail? And how much could a worst-case scenario like Brett McMurphy is projecting kind of pull that back a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say, this class, which is pretty close to the top 5, it's the best class Tennessee's had in a decade. It's really residual effects of the 2022 season, of the really good year 2 years ago. That's usually how recruiting goes. You don't get the benefits the next year. You get them 2 years later. And so I think that's where this is coming from. And then you throw NIL into it, and obviously Tennessee has the money and the infrastructure and all that they are getting a handful of kids now. They're not getting them because of NIL necessarily solely. They're getting them to campus, kids that they maybe not got to campus in the past. They're getting their top 3 finalists for kids now that maybe they wouldn't have been in the past. I think it's extending the recruiting clock for Tennessee a few months more because of NIL. Because there's a number of kids, especially in bordering states, that was, James Pierce was that guy a couple years ago. David Sanders, the 5-star offensive tackle they got, he's from Charlotte. So you're getting kids from bordering states that maybe pre-NIL would say, I'll consider Tennessee, I'll look into it, but then they sort of, cut Tennessee out halfway through the process. Now it's more like, hey, I know Tennessee's going to pay. I know they have NIL. I can talk around to 7-on-7 tournaments to other 5-stars, and everybody says Tennessee has NIL money. So it would be really stupid for me to not go to campus and hear the offer and see what they have to offer. And then once they get there, they love the staff, they love the offense. They go to a game and there's 102,000 people there, and it's sort of, I think NIL is more it's a valuable tool and it's sort of the hook, but then it just gets them to campus, and that's where Josh Heupel and the staff have taken advantage of things. And if they're a playoff team this year, obviously that momentum will keep up. But I think it's more so just if they're in the mix. And I think we can't overlook the fact that they're bringing in high 4-star and 5-star quarterbacks. Nico, I think, came here because of NIL. I think we can all agree on that. I don't know that he ever comes to Tennessee if there's not that huge NIL payday. But once you get him, it attracts other players. And then you get another blue-chip quarterback, it attracts other players. It's that's the one position in football that other players will at least listen to your pitch if you've got a 5-star quarterback.
Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. KnoxNews.com is where you can read everything that he's written. So we bring up recruiting and NIL and the way that this staff has been able to rebuild this roster in Josh Heupel's image. They've had a bunch of big successes here, and most importantly, David Sanders, who commits to Tennessee, is the highest-ranked recruit in, a decade at the University of Tennessee. Bigger win, though, for the Vols as a program. David Sanders' commitment or flipping a player like Jaden Harmon from Alabama, because for Tennessee fans to see something like that and to be able to actually, know that they've taken a player who's so highly touted away from the Crimson Tide, there has to be some satisfaction in that as well.
Yeah, I think they're both telling in their own ways. David Sanders, 5-star, not only 5-star, he's the number 2 player in the class if you look at like the 24/7 composite. So that's higher than Nico. And so that's telling in a way that it says they're getting not just the best players at their position, but they're getting the elite players in all of the class. You need star power, and they have arguably the best defensive player going into this year, James Pierce. They have arguably the best quarterback of his class, in Nico, and now this guy is sort of the next guy in line. I think the Harmon flip is telling in a different way. For years, you would see Alabama would get the top linebackers for obvious reasons. It's Alabama, their defense, and Nick Saban. This is flipping a guy that was committed to Alabama, where Nick Saban is no longer at, flipping him to a school that really hasn't had a lot of great linebackers lately. It's sort of I think it's more maybe an alarm for Alabama as much as it is a celebration for Tennessee, which, by the way, back to David Sanders, the number 1 offensive tackle in the class went to Alabama. I think it was 4 of the last 6 years, and now Tennessee got that guy. So again, in Tuscaloosa, I think it's maybe more of a reason to panic a little bit than it is for Tennessee to celebrate, but obviously those two go together.
Adam, as we're, 10 days away from kickoff against UTC, what has been the most interesting training camp development for you?
Well, we're in this time between when practices are closed and when game week comes, and during that, I call it the freak out time for Tennessee fans, for really any college football fans. Like, what's wrong with this team? And the freak out right now is like, why is Will Brooks possibly starting at safety? He's a walk-on. He's a senior. He's a good special teams player. But what has gone wrong either with the coaching or development or that little part of recruiting that they don't have a scholarship player that can start at a position that's really been a little bit of an issue every season under Josh Heupel. And it's a worthwhile story. I mean, it's a worthwhile thing to look at. It's nothing against Will Brooks. I think he's earned that spot. But, Boo Carter's pretty good. Is he going to play star? Could he be an option at safety? They got Jacoby Thomas from MTSU, who is one of the better safeties in Conference USA. Why is he not developed quick enough in the 9 months he's been here? So, if something goes wrong, you have to nitpick and think, why would it go wrong? And that secondary is certainly one that people are looking at, especially if it's a coaching decision. If Tim Banks puts a lesser talented older player out there, when obviously he's got a good young option in Boo Carter. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's certainly something we're going to be looking at.
So I guess that would have been my follow-up. Do you think it's a fair reaction, maybe not overreaction from fans, but a fair curiosity? And I guess you've answered that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a fair reaction. My question is, I think a lot of guys are going to play. It's Chattanooga. A lot of guys are going to play at every position. There's one school of thought that you put the older guy out. You start the older guy, and then you play the younger guys after him, or the new guys in Jacoby Thomas's case. And so you can maybe get them ready for NC State. I would wonder if you more flip it. You start the younger guys, give them more reps against Chattanooga, because what do you have to lose? And then if that doesn't work out, you can always go back to Will Brooks in the NC State game, because they have to figure these type of personnel questions in week 1, because when you get to week 2, you're in a neutral site game, you're on the road, and you're playing a top 25 team. And the NC State game is a game that could, if you lose it, could kick you out of the playoff race really quickly. If you win it, you're probably going to Oklahoma close to a top 10 ranking. And so there's a lot riding on that game, that's for sure.
So they beat out guys or programs like Alabama and Georgia for the services of David Sanders. And I really enjoyed your piece on Josh Heupel and how he recruits from border states. What were you able to discover through reporting that piece out?
Well, I mean, it's just a lot of the players that we know and are starting to know, James Pierce and Dylan Sampson and Squirrel White, these are all guys that they've gone into North Carolina, into Georgia, into Alabama, and have gotten. And, anybody my age or certainly older will remember Phil Fulmer's teams, some of Johnny Major's too, but especially Phil Fulmer's teams in the 90s and early 2000s. There was a lot of really good Tennessee in-state players on those teams, but the immense talent and depth of those teams were built by going into the bordering states and getting their best players, going down into Atlanta and getting a kid that Georgia would otherwise have, going into the Carolinas and getting a kid that Clemson or somebody else would go get. The same for Alabama and a little bit from Florida. But Josh Heupel, through NIL, through his staff, through some of what they've done with offense and recruiting quarterbacks, they've been able to go into bordering states and get enough players to make them competitive. And that's what they're going to have to do. That's what Phil Fulmer did. That's what Josh Heupel is now doing.
Speaking of Josh Heupel, when you think Heupel's name, when you say it, you think offense. It's like a chain reaction in your mind, Adam. But obviously this defense returns more. It feels like they have more proven commodities on that side of the ball. And a lot of the discussion here at Titans camp early on has been, defense ahead of the offense, as is typically the case early in camp, especially with a first-time starting quarterback, new coach, all those things. Not a new coach in Tennessee, obviously, but Nico's first year as the full-time starter. Is there any discussion to Tennessee's defense maybe being ahead of the offense as that side continues to gel a little bit?
Well, I mean, you're going to have to – it sound like a coach question, but you're going to have balance. I think the offense by mid-year is going to look better than it did last year. I think you're still going to have to work out some things with Nico. It's going to be more dynamic. It's going to be funner to watch than last year. And I think offensively they will be balanced. They'll be able to run it, throw it. Nico will bring it sort of a dynamic element to it. I think the bigger question is, can defense be balanced enough in itself to help out the offense? Defensive line is going to be really good. It's just there's just too many pieces over there. Even aside from James Pierce, there's too many options for it not to work. They're going to have a good pass rush. They're going to be good against the run. It's just really a math equation about, can it be good enough to prop up the secondary, or can the secondary be average enough that that defensive line can dominate? I think that's the bigger question. And if that equation goes the right way on defense, then you've got probably a playoff team. I think that's the real thing. If you're looking for holes, it's in the secondary, and it doesn't need to be great. It just needs to be good enough.
Adam, who's going to kick for this team?
Max, is it Gilbert? Deep into camp, if I can't remember the kicker's name. It could have been Tuberville, but they've got a redshirt sophomore. I think Tuberville's a redshirt sophomore, maybe a junior.
Yeah, Max Gilbert.
Max Gilbert. Yeah, okay, good. I had the name right.
Nailed it.
Those guys are both options. It's really the question of Tuberville will do kickoffs, which he did last year. And it's always the question you ask every year, like, can the kickoff guy also does it take anything away from him to also be the place kicker? And that's the question right now, and I don't think they have an answer to it, and they may not have it until deep into the season.
He's Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel. He always has the answers for us. KnoxNews.com is where you can read him. Follow him on Twitter at Adam Sparks. Buddy, thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Always good to catch up with Adam Sparks on the latest. A lot to learn there about the Tennessee Vols roster.
Different world when you have Brian Callahan stepping up and just saying, all right, here's what happened. Injuries, here you go. Lays it out, moves on. And then when you get an injury update from Heupel, it's like he let it slip. It was an accident. So he did say
he's back there behind the curtain with the PR staff afterwards, being like, damn it. I was doing so good.
Batting 1,000 but no, Cam Seldon being cleared is big for Tennessee. They had basically been non-contact with him and been super cautious with Dylan Sampson, who's going to be so critical to this team's success on offense. So you feel way better about running back depth than you did even 2 weeks ago, because you thought, could Seldon be out for week one? How important is Sampson then? What are you getting from Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis on the back end of that room? And it seems like both of those players are coming on as well. Obviously, that group as a whole has been a strength for that team the last couple of years and is critical to what they do on offense.
What made you say, oh no, in sports this week is coming up next. What can people win if they give us the best submission today, Jackson?
What's up? Oh, the giveaway. Tell us what made you say, oh no, in sports this week. For a chance to win 2 tickets to see Matt Rife this Saturday at Bridgestone Arena, plus a $100 A Moment's Peace gift card.
615-737-1045 is the number. I asked Jackson, are you ready? And he thinks he's funny.
Funny guy. Matt Rife. Actually a funny guy.
Actually a funny guy. Maybe we'll send Jackson to the show to get some notes on how to actually be a funny guy.
Whether you think he's funny or not, but he is professionally funny, unlike Jackson. So call in, get these tickets.
Don't tell Jackson that.